Hello, I'm Michael, and in today's video we're gonna focus on scouting again. So if you remember, a few weeks ago, the last Focus On episode, I already talked about scouting and my favorite way to discover new photo spots. And that's basically staying in one place for a couple of days and doing some runs. So basically a training run, which then turns into a scouting run. So during those runs, I try to keep an eye out for interesting subjects, interesting places, and things I can return to with the camera later. And on Corfu and also on other occasions, this worked pretty well. So I showed you the photo I took of the olive tree grove in the last video. And yeah, well, I just like to scout that way if I have the opportunity. So this time here, we're in the Vikos Gorge area. It's different. I don't have that many days, so if I do a scouting run today and find something, I might not have the chance to return later to photograph it. So if that's the case, if I don't have so much time, which happens also quite frequently during my travels, I can't always plan in like 4 or 5 days, sometimes it's shorter, then I directly bring my camera gear. But I still do scouting, so I don't just directly head to the photo spots. I still like to discover new places. And here in this video, I want to take you along on such a scouting hike, show you some of the beautiful surroundings here, the Vikos Gorge area, hopefully also some viewpoints which we might discover along the way, maybe do some photography, and I'll also give you some tips on how I plan such hikes, what I'm looking for, and maybe also some photo tips if there's an actual photo shoot. So currently I don't know yet, so it's a hike into the unknown. I haven't seen any photos of the places where I'm going now. And yeah, enough talk, let's first do some hiking, have a look, and then I give you a few tips on scouting. So the first tip about scouting is you want to be prepared. So I don't just head out, drive somewhere, start a hike into the unknown. So I previously do some preparation, some research, and try to find out where I want to do the hike. And then also I want to figure out what type of hike it will be. So how far it is, how much elevation is there to gain, what's the terrain looking like, stuff like that. And also, first of all, deciding upon where to hike. So is there anything that holds photographic potential or might hold photographic potential? So I don't know yet, but at least I can find interesting areas. And I now want to show you how I do that. So let's switch over into the office and show you the tools I use and how I prepare a hike like this one today. To plan such a scouting hike, I use a couple of tools. There are times when I use additional tools and techniques, but these few core tools always come into play. So at first, I simply use Google Maps to get an overview of the area I want to explore. I use the satellite imagery and the terrain map to identify the major features in the landscape. So for the Vikos Gorge, it tells me how the gorge is oriented and where the canyon walls are. I already see this here in the satellite imagery. So here's the main gorge going down in this direction, and then here's a branch going off into the eastern direction. And if I click on the terrain here, I can also see this. So for this scouting, I'm looking for something to photograph for sunset, which is why I selected the eastern side here of the gorge for my scouting tour. And the idea here was to find a vantage point from which I could get a good view towards sunset with the gorge showing. So the sunset is up here in this direction, so I could either shoot from here up into this direction, so directly into the direction of the sun, or shoot from eastern side here towards the west and have some nice side light. So those are the possibilities I have if I pick this lower eastern area of the gorge to search for viewpoints. Now let's switch back to the satellite imagery and look at some of the marked viewpoints. Now the best viewpoint and also the most popular in the Vikos Gorge area is this one here, the Beloy viewpoint.
And such viewpoints which are marked on the map, you can just click on them and already see some photos of it, which give you an idea of what to expect. So if I click down here on all, so I see some photos here. This one seems to be taken directly from the viewpoint, and those here are around the viewpoint, most likely on the way there. But if you look at some of the photos also here, what you see is most of those photos for this Beloy viewpoint don't show any foreground. And this lack of foreground tells me that it might be one of those views where you don't have much possibilities to explore. And that's often the case for the most popular viewpoints. They often have some walls, some designated areas where you can stand just to make it safe for all the viewers. And it's often hard to find views to the left or right of those viewpoints. I can't be 100% certain though. For this, I'd really need to get there and have a look for myself. In this case, I didn't just want to head to this popular view and instead explore other possible vantage points. And this is always a bit of a gamble, but it can also be a lot of fun. So sometimes just looking here at the map, zooming in, you can find other viewpoints already marked there. For example, here you have the Radito steps, some stone forest. You can just hover over them and see some photos taken from there. Those might give you an idea if this is also a nice viewpoint to explore. Sometimes I even find viewpoints which are marked here, which are not even popular on Instagram yet. In this case here though, there's not much marked. And what interests me is the rim here. So this side of the gorge where it seems to be there's a huge drop, so a huge cliff, and there's the potential for a view also. If I click again on the terrain map, I can see that here along this rim I might get some views towards the west or from here a little towards the northwest. So the terrain map here in Google Maps is already quite good to get an idea of how the elevations are, where the drops are here at the rim. But you can also use OpenTopo Map, which is a bit more detailed and gives you an even finer grained view of the different elevation lines. So I also like to use this, and then I also like to switch over to Google Earth to get an even better idea of how the area would look, not only from the top but also as a 3D view. This works especially nice for mountainous areas. Here for the gorge I found it a bit hard because those edges here again are pretty flat, but let's just zoom in here on the Beloy view here in Google Earth and now see how this view looks. So I just got very close and then just look into the gorge, so you see you get a very good idea here. Let's just go very close here. And then what I also can do here, here's a little button so you can switch on the simulation for the sun. So you see here at 9 when the sun sets, you see exactly what light you can expect. So first those canyon walls would be lit up while those are already in shade, and then it gets down into twilight. The light here also dissipates, and that's a very nice way to pre-visualize how a photo would look, where you have shadows in your photo. Also, if I, for example, I was interested in those canyon walls up here, so I can fly over there, maybe to this one here, which I think could be or could hold a view, and then I can also simulate where the sun goes down, so it goes down to the side, so I would just have side light. Here, just judging from Google Maps, this doesn't look so interesting, but I seldom let myself be discouraged just from looking at Google Earth. There's a lot more, as you can see, along this cliff. So if I was further down here, I might get some light here on those cliffs while those get into shade. So there's quite some potential here also with those mountains in the background. And also here there seems to be a little canyon leading towards the main gorge. It's a hilly area with many little hills, little canyons here which I can see, those bigger drops, maybe here even. So this is something I now really need to explore by myself. Those tools just help me to get a first idea what to expect. Here I have to say it's not that obvious, as sometimes if you fly around through the mountains, the Alps for example, with Google Earth, you already can know very well what to expect. If there's a photo, you can even simulate your final photo there. But I find for the Vikos Gorge area, it's not that easy because, as I said, this is very flat. The rim here, this rim is very flat, and I expect a lot more interest in this area, also because of all the rock formations around the Vikos Gorge area. Now, although it's not that obvious that I'll find something to photograph in this area, I still want to proceed and plan a hike, and for this I use autoactive.com. I'm here on the topographic map for this area here, and you see there are a few trails marked which you don't see on Google Maps. So those trails are from the AutoActive framework. You can also switch here to other maps, for example OpenStreetMap. Here you also have those trails, but you see here one trail is missing, so then you have the AutoActive framework, which is also similar. Then the Topo Maps has some additional trails, so mostly those different maps here overlap, but sometimes it's good to switch through and see if there are potentially any trails, and I like to start my hikes on such trails. I don't shy away from going off trail a bit here and there, but it's just better to have some trails to start your hike with. And if there's something in view, a hill or a possible vantage point, I can still go there, but the intention here is to find something to photograph for sunset or sometimes for sunrise, and it's just very hard if there's no trail at all. And also, if you're walking through nature, it's usually better to stay on some official trails, which is why I like to use AutoActive to get an idea if in the area I find interesting some trails are present which I can use to get to different spots. And here you even see there's one viewpoint marked, and that's exactly in the area which I found interesting, which I already saw on Google Maps and then on Google Earth. So there actually seems to be some trail going towards this rim here, and there might be a viewpoint. So now that I have identified some trails here, what I want to do is I want to get an idea of how far I'd have to hike and what's the elevation gain. So I switch over to the route planner, and here I can just set some markers. So I want to start the hike here, and I'll switch over to the AutoActive map, which is a little easier to plan because it's not that cluttered. So let's just start the hike here at this parking lot. So I drop a marker here, then I hike up towards this hill. I can follow the trail here to this little intersection, then go over here, cross to this point here. There's even a little hill. It's a little off trail, but this would be something where I just could hike over and have a look, most likely. And then let's see if I want to get down here. Also see this viewpoint. If you look here at the elevation map, it seems to be dropping a bit, so a little climb might be involved. And now that I have this trail laid out here, I can see that in total it's less than 4 kilometers. I can also close the loop, and it would tell me if I go to this viewpoint and back less than 8 kilometers. So I know how long it might take me. I also see there's not so much elevation gain in total, less than 400 meters. So also, as you can see, pretty flat terrain. So some hills, but nothing too major. And this just helps me to get an idea of how much water I need to bring, how much I might need to complete the hike. I mean, I don't yet know how the terrain really looks. Some of those trails which are marked here haven't been walked for months or even years sometimes. So I never know, but I could also think, okay, 8 kilometers is not that much. I could even extend the hike and maybe also hike up to this view. So I can extend this planning. And the nice thing now is I can later save it. I have an account. I pay a yearly fee here to use all those maps and features. When I save it here, I can later access it on my cell phone in the AutoActive app, and I can also download it. So I have the map and the planning available offline, which is pretty nice. If I head into areas where there's no cell reception, I usually have GPS and I can still follow those trails and get an idea where I am. And that's very handy. Also, I can get a live view where I'm at in terms of elevation, how much elevation I've gained, how far I've gone. For me, that's a very handy tool, and there are other services you could use. I just like to use AutoActive for that. Okay, so this is basically the planning which I've made for this little scouting hike. The idea is to get to this view here, and I don't know yet what to expect, if I can even reach it. So this is now to find out. and I guess we now head back into the field to continue with the video.
So the next tip is to be open to also find places along the way, or to head off the trail a bit if you find something interesting. So I just showed you how I planned this hike. So I had some viewpoints which I found on the map, and I planned the hike there. Now I'm on the hike, but I'm still keeping an eye out for interesting spots which I might find along the way, which are not the destination, which are basically here, those places here with those rocks, for example. This could hold potential, and if I find those, I'm also open to make those my photo spot later on. I mark those on a map, for example, or also I'm open to take a photo already before sunset. So now the light's not so nice, but it might be that I'm hiking and I get some beautiful light. I'm not yet at the final destination, but I might find such a interesting landscape. So I set down my camera gear and take a photo. So it's not just about finding something for later sunset photography or sunrise photography. It's also about taking photos along the way. I mean, if I bring all that camera gear, I can also use it. So that's tip number 2. Be open, take photos along the way if the opportunity presents itself, or if you see some hill which is a little off trail, if you can make it there, have a look and see if there's even a better view than the one you marked on the map during planning. So while I'm doing a little break from the hike, a little bonus for tip number 2, which I forgot to mention. So as you discover spots along the way, don't forget to also make some test shots with your cell phone. So even if you don't take a photo right away with the camera, at least get a snapshot with a cell phone, see how you would compose a photo later on, because once you reach your final photo spot for the evening, sometimes you then want to remember, okay, what spots have you passed? Maybe they are better. So you can then slip through your photos on the cell phone and compare what's actually the photo spot which holds the most potential. And that's very important. So don't forget it. Don't just look and see those spots. Also archive those in your cell phone. If you want, mark them on Google Maps, and then you can return to and decide what you actually want to photograph for sunset. So tip number 3 is you have to know where the light is or where the light will be, because especially if you follow tip number 2 and also you discover places along the way, you should know where the light will be for sunset or sunrise later on, and this will help you determine if a place is actually good for photography at those times. So I use apps like PhotoPills. I can use the augmented reality view where I see directly in the field, hold up my cell phone, and I can see where the sun will go down or up. So I can see if it will be in the frame, if I'm at a location along the way, and I can frame my shot, test it. Can also use it to get a preview of different focal length, so I can know which lens I might want to use later. So this all helps. I can also use apps like Planet, which I actually prefer to do planning beforehand. So if I'm really during a scouting trip or hike, I prefer to use PhotoPills, because the augmented reality, it's just a great tool. So that's important, and always make sure you know where the light will be. Otherwise you might end up at the place, set up everything, and this has happened for me, and then the light is going off in the completely other direction of where your subject is, and this can be quite frustrating, and you want to avoid that. So the next tip is to know when to turn around. So I'm now following a path which was marked on the map, and I kind of ended up here in this field of rocks, trees, where there isn't any clear path. Down there it's going down and then up somewhere. I estimate the viewpoint to be somewhere over there, but I'm not sure if that's the best approach here. So based on your abilities of your path finding skills, you have to know when it's a good time to head back and maybe try another approach, or head back completely and go to one of the spots you found along the way, because you have to remember the goal here is to find a spot for sunset or sunrise. So wherever you end up, the path there, you have to return then in the dark. So if this path I'm now walking is a little bit too dicey now already, or hard to find, it will be even harder to find later when it's dark. So that's important. Always keep this in mind while you're scouting the path to your location. Is it safe enough to get you back when it's dark? So I think this is not the best spot to continue. I'll go back. Over there is a little hill where there's just grass around. So I'll first go up there, and from there I'll assess the situation and see if there's a clearer path to the viewpoint, if there even is a viewpoint. Also up there where I came from, behind those trees, you don't see it now, I saw when I went down and looked back some potentially even better viewpoint, which was also much closer to the path, though I might also want to check this out. But the important thing here is to be aware of your capabilities, of your pathfinding skills, think about returning in the dark, and then know when there's enough and you have to go back. So I'm already back at the car. The scouting tour was cut short by thunder in the distance. So just as I recorded the last part of this video about knowing when to turn around, well, actually I heard the first thunder rolling in the distance. So I went back up where I came from to a little hill where I could see farther into the distance, and yeah, I saw the dark clouds. They're not moving very fast, so I'm not yet sure if they will come really into this direction, but yeah, better safe than sorry. So I thought I just go back to the car for now, wait it out and see how the weather develops. And also on the way back, I again came across one of the views which I scouted along the way already, and actually I have to say it's a very, very nice view, much better than what I saw when I cut closer to the theoretical viewpoint which I've seen on the map. I didn't make it all the way there. I just went up this hill, and there was also a nice view, but the one which is maybe 3 kilometers from here or 2.5 kilometers from here, that's a really fine view. And plan currently is just to wait a bit, see how the weather develops. I'll also climb up that hill again where I can better see the weather, and yeah, if the thunder dissipates, there's no thunderstorm, I head back for sunset to this viewpoint. Also, this brings me to another tip, which is have a backup plan. So in case this doesn't work, I'm actually here at a parking lot for a popular viewpoint which is called the Beloy view. It's maybe 15 minutes that direction, and yeah, I've seen photos of it. It's a great viewpoint where you're looking down into the gorge. There's not so much potential most likely in terms of walking around finding different spots with foreground. There's just this viewpoint and maybe 1 or 2 places where you can go left and right, but not so much to wander off. But still, it's a backup plan. So in case I can't make it to the viewpoint where I would need maybe half an hour or 40 minutes, I can still try to just go to this popular viewpoint and at least take a photo. Though that's also always important if you're heading out to discover or to explore. It's good to have some backup in case you just don't find anything. If then the day turns to an end, sunset approaches and you get nice light, you still know where to go and at least take a photo. Okay, so for now, just gonna wait, and then we'll see if there's a photo today or if I just head home. So it seems there's a happy end to this Focus On episode. I'm glad to be able to finish it with an actual photo shoot. So the thunderstorm rolled past, didn't actually come in here, but it was still better to be safe in the car, wait it out. I'm now back at the photo spot I scouted along the way. It's still 1.5 hours till sunset, so I have plenty of time, and currently the light is just awesome. When the sun breaks through the clouds there, it just paints the landscape. It's just fantastic. And look at this landscape. There are layers and layers of rocks. So if you look closely, this is how those rocks look. So it's different layers. Looks fantastic, the textures there. And when the light hits those rocks, it's really beautiful, especially with the greenery in between. So my composition currently includes some flowers there in the foreground, some ferns, some bushes, then focusing into this direction and having the dark clouds above is the icing on the cake. I'm gonna stick around a bit longer. I'm not sure if sunset is the right time here, because now this scene is really all about the light and the colors I'm having now. In terms of technicalities, I have a 2-stop graduated neutral density filter, but I also do bracketing just to make sure to capture the whole dynamic range. I don't need focus stacking here, so there's no immediate foreground. So a pretty simple shot. The actual difficulty was finding it, and I tell you, you won't find any photo of this spot online. At least I'm pretty sure. I didn't know about this spot and actually was looking for something like that, something very characteristic of this place here, of this Vikos Gorge. It's not only the gorge. If you visit this place, if you drive around, you'll notice those layered rocks everywhere, and I just wanted to find something like that for a photo, and yeah, today I found it and I'm glad I can now take a photo. So I hope you enjoyed this little video. If you have further tips on scouting, leave those in the comments below, and yeah, see you in the next video. Bye.